Any good stories from the road?
Pipe up.
I wish we'd gotten to see a little bit more out of our punter.
I'm starting to puke.
It makes my stomach hurt.
I thought he was going to die.
I'm starting to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
He's on the probiotics.
Is Georgia playing the 1985 Bears this weekend or what?
A lot of Todd talk.
Rat poison proof.
They're mongoose.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction.
Hey, y'all. See, we got a few of the dogs out there in Dog Nation watching the Georgia show on a Sunday night. Just because there's no game week doesn't mean that Jake Rowe and Palmer Toms aren't around to talk about this team with me. And Palmer, I'm going to start with you, my man. You're like the urban cowboy. Made it back from the Big Apple, the Windy City. I think they call it that, the City of Lights. How was the Heisman ceremony, man?
It was fun. It was really fun. Cool, obviously a cool time to go up there. The holiday season, the way that the city celebrates that and lights up. And, obviously a lot of people there. Our Uber driver on the way in told us that we might be coming at the worst time of year if you're trying to avoid people. That he said the post New Year's lull is probably the best time of year to come. And try and avoid the touristiness of it. But we were tourists in the Big Apple, the big city of New York, and it was super fun. Got to stayed in Times Square, got to explore in and around Manhattan, and obviously the man of the hour there. Talked to him a couple times. It was cool because it was a smaller group of us there. No offense to everybody on the beat, but it's a lot nicer when he doesn't feel overwhelmed. He actually welcomed us and said that he was happy to see us because he gets a little bit of homesickness, and so to see a couple of familiar faces. There were 5-6 of us up there that cover Georgia, and so we had a good time. Obviously Stetson comes home empty-handed, but as I wrote in my column, my post New York column that posted live from LaGuardia Airport, no Heisman, no shame. Still a lot to be proud of if you're Stetson Bennett, if you're a fan of Stetson Bennett, if you're somebody who covers Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, I said beforehand that I wasn't going to be surprised with any outcome. Just because Stetson, at this point, to me, he can't surprise me, whether that's good or bad. Luckily for Dogs fans, over the last several games of this season, it's been a good thing. But what was the attitude of Stetson and, just the whole Georgia crew, I guess? I mean, I don't think too many Georgia fans are surprised that he didn't win it. I did love to see the tenacity, the stick up for the mailman, even after a lot of those people probably doubted him at games in his career in a Georgia uniform in years past, and as recently as last season, maybe even this season, if it took you a while to come around. I did appreciate seeing Georgia fans stick up for him, even if, maybe realistically they knew Caleb Williams and that fingernail polish were ultimately going to hoist the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool to see, the entire fan base. Jordan Hill, who I was spending a lot of the weekend with, we were both up there. He and I were joking that, it wasn't the Georgia football social media account. It was the Stetson Bennett fan page social media account. Felt like that was the only content we were seeing, and rightfully so. Like you said, it was cool to see everybody come together to back Stetson. Obviously there were a lot of national naysayers there, thinking that he didn't deserve to be on ballots, didn't deserve to, most namely didn't deserve to make the trip to New York that they thought Hendon Hooker did. That's not, it's not a subjective thing. It's a, top 4 vote getters get to go to New York. So,
and how many people vote on that?
800 something. I mean, less than 1,000, but more than just a couple.
I think
more
it's
than
like
a handful.
935.
I was gonna go 800 something. So yeah, I mean, I think it was cool to see. Obviously he earned his place there. He wouldn't have been there had he not been top 4 in voting. Finishes 4th among the 4 finalists. Not terribly surprising there. Like you said, Wes, I really didn't know what to expect. We were, I did not think he would win it. I thought it was Caleb Williams to lose, and ultimately he, took home the trophy. I thought
Stetson Bennett the 4th, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought Max Duggan was gonna, give Williams the most.
Yeah, man. The votes that Duggan got, maybe the most surprising thing on the ballot to me. I don't know about you guys.
No, not really. I mean, I kind of thought that he was going to give the most pushback to Williams for that top spot. Just looking at the way other awards have gone. So, Stetson in my mind was bound for 3rd or 4th, and obviously finishes 4th. But overall, weekend, a season, a career to celebrate. And a really cool way to do it for him, this far into his collegiate career. Obviously, he got asked the legacy question, hey, how do you want to be remembered at Georgia? And
he's not done yet.
Exactly. And he said that he's got some, hadn't thought about it, wasn't going to think about it. All he's thinking about now is on to the Buckeyes.
Jamon Dumas-Johnson had a tweet last night pretty much as soon as Caleb Williams won it. He said, proud of you, 13, but we got more work to do. And Stetson spoke about that when y'all had a chance to talk to him, Palmer. And he brought up the fact that he and A.D. Mitchell need to get back on track. And Jake, you've been hounding Kirby about A.D.'s status over the last several weeks. It now seems like with Stetson's comments there, I don't think they're really hiding too much. You saw him throw the 2-point conversion in the SEC championship game. It feels like a month ago now with all the Heisman stuff that we've been filtering through over the last few days. But that's got to be a very encouraging drop there from Stetson, talking about the first thing he needs to do is get back on the same page as A.D. Mitchell.
Going into that Heisman presentation last night, I was watching the replay of the Georgia LSU game. I guess kind of conveniently forgotten in that game because so much happened after that was AD's first target since hurting himself was, they tried to go to him on a little whip route in the red zone there.
Got tangled up a little bit.
Yeah, got tangled up,
slipped
down. Yeah, slipped down. It was the same play that he scored on at Auburn last year. He twisted up Roger McCreary and scored on that play last year. So he is he's a guy, he's special. He's a special part of this offense. I don't want to say he's like one of the best receiver in the country. Stetson went as far as almost to say that, a few weeks ago, but he's a special piece of this offense because he kind of unlocks some things on the outside and things Georgia can do as far as spacing and keeping things off of Darnell Washington, off of Brock Bowers, makes the run game better. He's a good blocker. So I think all of those things are very big, and he's going to be juiced for these last couple of games here because he's a guy that has had to kind of sit there and watch it happen all season long. It's been a very, very tough recovery for him, and he's back now. And not only is he going to get a chance to kind of rest it, but he's also going to get a chance to kind of be the fresh legs that Kendall Milton has been for Georgia late in this season, late in the regular season. AD can kind of provide that for him at the receiver position in the playoffs.
So I think that we've had an opportunity to separate ourselves from the SEC championship. We really want to look at Ohio State, and we will as the show goes on. But I'm curious for you, Jake. Hope you're still with us. Palmer, too. I know the past week's been crazy for y'all, but just looking back, some of those things that, just about Georgia, not just the matchup with Ohio State, But what are some reflections, maybe some shower thoughts you've had about the Dogs if you're still thinking about the team as much as you are on a game week? I know I am. I'm excited for this Peach Bowl. As far as Georgia's concerned, what are some of the end-of-the-year storylines that you maybe expect Georgia to tweak, adjust, or if they're working well, continue going into the playoff?
I think it starts with pressure. For me, going back and watching, I think, Wes, you mentioned it, that Georgia 60 or whatever for the SEC championship game. Kirby came back to the sideline at one point in that game and said, he's got all day to throw back there, guys. We saw what Georgia kind of dialed up for Tennessee, and they did it in two separate waves. I think you're going to see something similar against Ohio State. I think Georgia's going to be really one good thing about coaching defense is, and listen, I coached a little ball in high school, all right, and there's so much more. There's so much more that goes into what they do. But I will say this, and I think this kind of universally rings true. Palmer played ball in high school, so I think he would probably agree with this. Wes, you did too. It's easier to install something new on defense than it is offense. Like, it's easier to put in a blitz or to put in a wrinkle or to change, okay, instead of bringing the nickel, we're going to bring the strong safety and overload on the left instead of the right, or something. It's easier to do that because you can fit that, and you don't have to have the timing of anybody else. You don't have to get anybody else's on the same page as you necessarily. You kind of just have to do your job. Well, on offense, you've got to rep it with these receivers, and you've got to work on this protection, and you've got to do all these different things. Whereas, you can put new things in during walkthrough and kind of master them, or at least get them to the point where you can use them and use them well. I also think the standard of use is a little lower. But you can do those things. And I think that's something that you're going to see a lot out of Georgia, as they go to spring practice / fall camp style practices for probably about a week before the game prep begins.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said at the very beginning of that. When you say that Georgia rolled something out in two waves against Tennessee, I think that's a great point, because it wasn't just we're going to keep dialing up the same thing. We're going to, Georgia made it look interesting, but also they haven't really done that from whistle to whistle in any game since. So I feel like your prediction that Georgia could do something similar probably I would think spot on, because they haven't really put much of that, many of those tendencies for an entire game, unless I'm just not paying attention. That game was different.
It was. And what I will say to that is Georgia all season long, for better or for worse, has played up and down to its competition. And in that Tennessee game, they knew the challenge that was ahead of them. They played up to their competition. They rose to the occasion. And they were excited to play. I think we saw that in the first half of the SEC championship game. We've seen it in spurts. It hasn't. I think what you've seen is in that Tennessee game, you saw a full 60-minute effort because of the opponent, because of the occasion. I wouldn't say you didn't see a 60-minute effort against LSU, but it was not their best 60-minute effort.
Well, it was almost like, Jake, you mentioned, I think the last time we spoke, Georgia changed some things up schematically in that game too.
Kirby said that too. He said that after the game. He said they did some things different. I also think you had some players they were ready for the celebration. They were like me at the end of an NCAA football season on the old PS3 back in
Dynasty
the day.
mode.
Yeah, you get Dynasty mode, you get on the national championship game. Who cares about the national championship game? Let's get this class signed.
Yeah, you've taken the Akron Zips from nowhere to a college football dynasty, and you've just put your blood, sweat, and tears into it for the last 2 decades of video game life.
And I've got a unicorn corner that I have recruited. He's this number 2 player in the country, Roosevelt Hollis, 6'4", 198 pounds, best cornerback in the country. He's a little thin, he's a little light, but he's a stud.
Right.
Jake,
And,
were
and
you?
little do you know, Roosevelt Hollis went on to have 47 picks in his career at Wake Forest. And
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Were you Wake
transfer.
Forest?
yeah, I was Wake Forest. Yeah, I had dude. Let me tell you something. I had an absolute beast of a dynasty built. Roos. Maybe one of these days, Roos and I are going to do a podcast, and we're going to do a lot of talking about these dynasties that we used to build on the Xbox or whatever. I think it was an Xbox, but yeah, built Wake Forest, man. Wake Forest into a power with Roosevelt Hollis.
Perennial powerhouse.
Yeah.
Who was his team?
I
he
don't know. I
Pitt or
think Michigan
something?
State. I think he had Michigan State. There was a Pitt
See,
dynasty in there too.
I can't help but look at him, and I did the same thing, okay? But I'm just being objective here. When you start off with a Power 5 program of that ilk, it's not the same. It's almost, I don't feel like it's what they created dynasty mode to be. Like,
Well,
you're supposed to
I like
take,
grabbing the underdog from the Power
Yes.
5 level, because then you don't have to. Then you don't. All right, listen. I can take the Akron Zips and I can win, but
my roommate did Akron. That's why Akron was
But
the
it's going
first
to be.
one to come to mind.
Let's be honest. For me, at least, there's some guys with better skill than myself, and we got to get off this because nobody cares about how we play video games.
That's fine.
But
Like,
there are
it's like
people.
your
Not a
fantasy
game week.
team. Nobody wants to hear about your fantasy team. Nobody
Right. But there are probably people with better skills than me. But if the worse my team was, the more I was going to have to lean on one or two plays to move the football because it's just hard. It's hard to score points. You could put together defense and make it hard for teams to score on you in the red zone and have to kick field goals. But figuring out a way to put points up if you got one of those bad mid-major teams is hard. So you're having to just sit there and lean on like two plays, audibles, quick slants, and like clear everybody out, one route, max protect, all that stuff. So, but to the point, they were like we used to.
That's the kind of celebration they were having.
They were ready to get They were ready to get on to something else, and that something else was celebration, mental break. And honestly, I think they smelled that coming. I say that because again, you guys played. I remember that bye week, and whenever you played high school ball, and you knew that off day on Monday was coming. I remember Friday night, if we had a lead before a bye week, I was just like, oh my God, I cannot wait. I don't have to do this on Sunday.
You don't even know what to do with yourself.
Yeah. So that's just kind of the way I felt about it.
I don't think you're too far off base there. Speaking of the SEC championship and celebrating, our friends over at BreakingT, what did I tell y'all? They're pros. I said they would be in the lab working on a new drop, and what did they do? They did exactly what I said. Thank you, Uncle Glenn Hartley, for getting us back on track. By the way, I saw that Go Dogs as we were getting way too deep in the weeds on NCAA football talk. But here's the BreakingT reveal, I guess, on the YouTube channel. Look at the mailman. Is it
merch drop, mic drop,
nut drop December? Not bad for a walk-on. Some cool stuff, some cool Stetson stuff, and all the same great gear we've had all season. Mailman, Feel the Bowers, Savage Pads, and the Big O. By the way, guys, Notre Dame fans are really coming after us, mainly me. I'm the one that's been sending the tweets.
No, they've been getting after me too, dude.
But the Michael Mayer. I'm not disrespecting the guy, but can we not see like all this award season stuff? That's what's made this week feel so long, is all these weird award season storylines. And the Brock Bowers deal winning the Mackey Award was almost as defensive and heated as Stetson getting into the Heisman Final Four over Hendon Hooker.
Well, it's just crazy how like the numbers don't compare. And I'm like, well, are you looking at total yardage here? Because one of those tight ends is such a big time weapon. They hand him the football. Would I have been pissed off if they had given Michael Mayer? Absolutely not. I would not have stumped for Brock Bowers at all. I didn't stump for him going into the award because I understood there's a tight end out there that's just as productive in the passing game. And Bowers is used differently. He's the focal point of defensive game plans in a lot of instances, and Georgia refuses to force feed him the football. I saw a stat somebody had, and I should have saved it. It was talking about Michael Mayer and Bowers. Bowers did much more yards per target, much more than Mayer did, because Georgia does not force him the football. It looks like Stetson forces him the ball sometimes, and I think that's just because, hell, you get a couple series in, and 19 hasn't had one thrown his way. You got to do one out of obligation just to, keep everybody happy. But ultimately, Bowers won the award because he's a freak show, and he's a better football player than Michael Mayer. You can say not a better pure tight end, John Mackey tight end. I don't care. I wouldn't have cared who won the award.
Yeah,
really,
who cares that
Bowers' ability to win it?
Yeah, look, what do any of these awards come down to? It's the same thing as the Heisman. It's the most outstanding whatever. Heisman's most outstanding football player, quarterback. The Mackey's the most outstanding tight end. And to me, it's not best tight end stats. Just run all those numbers through a computer and make it the BCS awards process. No one ever has to vote. And if that's what people want it to be, then fine. But that's what makes the college football award season so great right now is the internet and college football fan bases that are incredibly passionate about a handful of guys. And obviously Notre Dame fans are very passionate about Mayer because the whole offense basically runs through him, and he is carrying a load for the Irish. So I get that. But Bowers is just watch him catch the football, man. You can tell when there's a defense that isn't quite expecting it, a couple of DBs that maybe haven't played against him before, and he gets that first couple steps that burst on him, and they're just shocked that he can explode with the ball in his hands that quickly. He's a different kind of cat. But that's my Brock Bowers soapbox. All right, let's get on to the Buckeyes. We had a question from Matthew C. a little bit earlier on our message board about Georgia going up against the Buckeyes. Jake Yard gave us a little bit of a tease, but what are some things that you think Georgia fans should be looking out for if the Dogs are really hammering this? You could see them getting the better of the Buckeyes on New Year's Eve.
I think when you're really good, I think that one of the benefits of being really good is you kind of narrow the scope of what you need to do to win. And for Georgia, I think week in, week out, it's run the ball, stop and run. Well, one of those they're extremely good at, but there's nothing you can take as a given, and that's stopping the run. Alabama was elite at stopping the run in 2015, and Zeke Elliott lit them up. So, that's something you kind of have to – maybe – was it 2015?
14. First
14.
year of the playoff.
2014 season.
You gave me three guesses, and I missed the first two. So, there were three possibilities. Anyway, so Zeke Elliott lights them up, and Georgia can't have that happen. So, if it comes into this game and it stops the run and it runs the ball well, I think it beats Ohio State. I think that's just – I think the term I use sometimes is silver bullet. I think that's the silver bullet in this game. Run the ball, stop the run. But Ohio State's got different ways that can hurt you. And CJ Stroud's been on that stage, that Heisman stage, a couple times now. You can debate about what he is under pressure, what he is. I think the opponent deserves respect. Marvin Harrison's really good. I can't pronounce the other wide receiver's name. Also extremely good.
Yeah, Harrison is just unreal, dude.
Yeah, he makes some of the most insane catches. But I will
go watch a highlight reel. I know if you're a Georgia fan, you probably haven't watched a ton of Ohio State this season, but he's the real deal.
He's a George Pickens-esque, maybe not quite as fast as George Pickens, and God knows I wouldn't have said that this time last year. I was one of those idiots that didn't think George would run well, and he did. But I think, he's probably not going to run quite as well as George Pickens did, make some of those catches. On one hand, those guys ultimately, they scare defensive coordinators so much that they just stop thinking about them because they're like, all right, listen, I'm not going to be able to do a whole lot about this cat to scheme him up because he's going to make all these catches in tight coverage. We can cover him as tightly as we want to, and we're going to do that the best we can, the defensive back coach says. But at the end of the day, he's going to make plays. He's just better with the ball in the air than most guys are. And so that's what's going to happen to you. But ultimately, I think keep those guys in front. Don't let them hit the big plays. I think that's where Jackson Smith and Jigba not playing is. And I really believe Georgia will, just like it did against Tennessee, eliminate the big play if it stops the run.
Yeah, I'll start key in on the pressure that you talked about earlier, Jake, because Georgia has a freak that we're seeing right there hold up a quarterback in Jalen Carter. The ability for him to get pressure up in the middle, force CJ Stroud out of the pocket, force him, make him uncomfortable. We all saw the Tennessee game and what Hendon Hooker was, all season coming into that game versus what he was in that game. When Georgia made him feel like they were there, he was not nearly as good as he was when he didn't feel like anybody was, up in his grill. So, Jalen Carter, that's their way to help out those DBs in the tough matchup. If there's two players that I'm watching on the defensive side of the football, it's Jalen Carter and Keely Ringo. Obviously Keely is going to have the tough matchup.
They're going to have Keely in their sights, and I know a lot of Georgia fans did too. Well documented on this show. We know it's not just Keely that struggled against LSU. He's had his moments, but a lot of it, Jake, you've educated some posters on our board and in your comments. It's not as simple as Keely's just getting picked on. No. If you know ball, and we're not trying to condescend, and you're welcome to disagree with our appraisal of what we see out of Keely Ringo, but as you continue to say, Jake, it's a really hard position to play in a really hard league.
It is. And the thing I keep coming back to is this. I'm not saying he didn't struggle against LSU. Those are kind of blown out of proportion a little bit. He had a bad pass interference penalty. He's had a few of those this year. He's gotten picked on at times, and teams are getting the easy stuff off of him at times. No doubt about it. But the whole premise of the whole it came to a head in the LSU game. You saw fans and you saw, people who do breakdown content over the internet just kind of fawning over themselves to start talking about how, see, I told you Keely Ringo wasn't any good. When the previous week he had allowed 2 catches for 27 yards against Kentucky, and everybody said he got picked on there too. Or two catches for 37 yards, something like that. It wasn't anything outrageous. 2 out of 6. He's got the lowest completion percentage against of any Georgia defensive back this season.
And I guess what I'm saying with watching Keely is in a game like this where those receivers, not just Harrison, but Emeka Egbuka, there was my best attempt.
Good effort.
And you can go further down the line too. I mean, Julian Fleming was a former 5-star stud coming out of high school.
Big dude.
You've got those receivers are such a weapon that you have to have your top corner play well. I think if he plays well, everybody else has the ability to rise up around him. And again, that's where I think that creating pressure and making CJ Stroud uncomfortable. CJ Stroud, who, by the way, I really came away from this week a big fan of, just like his personality a lot. Probably
the not shaking Desmond's hand was pretty special. That was fun.
Of the other 3 finalists, he was the one that I probably enjoyed hearing from the most.
Yeah.
Just in terms of, obviously the matchup against Georgia, but I think he had some really good stuff to share as well. And you could sense the humbleness that he has, the humility.
Well, I think Georgia's defense is going to try to humble him on New Year's Eve. And this is my last thing about the Peach Bowl before we move on to some transfer portal stuff. When you hear fans say that this is going to be like Georgia is Michigan plus, I don't know if y'all have heard that narrative, or Michigan is Georgia light. Okay. So therefore you're going to see Ohio State get hammered. How accurate do y'all believe that narrative is? And it's not a specific thing at all, not a specific point of the game, but it's I guess a vibe about this game, about this matchup.
I don't think Georgia's a very good matchup for Ohio State because of that reason. It doesn't mean that's the way it's going to go down. There are people who think Ohio State's a bad matchup for Georgia. People think Tennessee was a bad matchup for Georgia. But, I mean, I think Georgia, it goes down to, I think, what what I wrote a column about and what I've said on the show a bunch of times is it's kind of in Georgia's hands. Go play your A+ game. You won't lose to anybody. Or you go play your A game and you probably won't lose to anybody. A- game, still probably not going to lose to anybody. Just go out there and play your best ball, protect the football, don't make mistakes. And, that's easier said than done. Obviously, football is a weird game. I mean, can y'all like wrap your head around the number of like one blade of grass between a receiver's foot and the out of bounds line and, catching, no catching. I mean, it's week after week. It's over and over.
Look
and
at
over.
how
It's
Georgia
crazy how
beat
this-
LSU. I mean, look at the field goal play. Look at the interception off the helmet. I mean, these plays they happen. They're real.
It's insane how often football delivers that to us. And I say that to illustrate you can't predict it. But I do believe if Georgia goes out there and takes care of the ball and plays well, it doesn't matter what Ohio State does. And that's not a slight to them. I just think that's just kind of how Georgia's put together and how everything is this year. Ohio State's perfectly capable of beating Georgia, but Georgia's going to have to not play its best ball to do that. Or Ohio State's going to have to figure out a way to, put Georgia in a position not to play its best ball.
They got a few weeks to work on some surprises. So Georgia working on some surprises right now. Jake, I know you've been following the Ra Thomas visit, the Mississippi State receiver. And of course, we're getting some news about Coach Mike Leach this evening.
Yeah.
Definitely have Coach Leach in our prayers and our thoughts tonight. I mean, I love that guy, huge respecter of what he's brought to the game of football. And I know a lot of people appreciate him as well. So we'll keep our eyes on that one, Jake. But one of his receivers is visiting the Dogs right now as a transfer portal candidate. What's the latest on that guy?
He got in town yesterday. I actually watched an Instagram live. Boy, what am I doing? Palmer's over there covering the Heisman Trophy ceremony. I've been doing this job a long time. This young buck's over here covering this, Heisman because, I was like,
those are just going to grow on trees now. That Palmer's on the beat,
and I'm just over here hanging out on Instagram Live with Ra Thomas and a couple of Dylan Johnson and some former Mississippi State players, and listening to Ra talk about Lane Kiffin and how he talks so low he couldn't understand what he was saying most of the time. Does not bode well for Ole Miss, I don't think. But yeah, he's in town, and I think at first, I thought he was probably going to be out of there in the morning. I think he's probably going to be there into the afternoon. Georgia's probably going to want to try to keep him around as long as they can.
They want to keep him forever.
Yeah, they probably want to. Hey, dude, just go ahead and move in. But he did say on that Instagram Live that he does have to go pick up his slang for stuff, stuff. So he does have to get back and do that. But once he does that, he'll be ready to go. I think he's taking an official visit to Auburn next weekend. I've been checking on some other transfer portal guys, not a whole lot out of Dante Cephas. I know that Georgia has offered Dominic Lovett at Missouri. They offered him right away, but then, it kind of never was anything officially announced, and that's a little bit outdated at this point. It's about a week old. And then, I was expecting them to make a move at the other Kent State wide receiver, the Walker kid. I keep forgetting his first name. Tez is what he goes by. Tez Walker. He was the one that caught the screen pass and just outran Georgia's defense for a touchdown. The game had over 100 yards receiving against Georgia. Still no contact with Georgia. He's gotten about 7 offers. And I do believe, based on what I've been told, that he would really love to hear from both Georgia and Alabama. We'll see if they do that. But right now, I've got 3 transfer portal offers out to receivers that we've confirmed. And that's
what about anything that you know on the Georgia Tech guy?
No, not at all. I haven't really heard anything there. I know that they're interested. That was one of the first things that I knew about. They were very.
He didn't officially go into the portal until later in the week. It had been
but I think everybody knew he was going to. I think Coach Key probably wanted an opportunity to meet with some of those guys after landing that job. He did decide to go into the portal. Georgia may pursue there, but the key here is, and I know this is being reported elsewhere. We've reported it this way from the jump too. Georgia really wants guys that can play outside, and I know a lot of fans, guys. We got it going on the board. Is people are like, hey, who are we going? You know, are any of these guys we're recruiting out of the portal better than the guys you have? That's not what this is about. Okay, you're recruiting dudes that can play right away, because I don't think you understand, folks, how paper thin Georgia was on the practice field this year at receiver. Because while A.D. Mitchell and Arian Smith were out or limited, guys like Jackson Meeks, Ladd McConkey, and all those guys, Kyrus Jackson had some times like this. Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint also had issues like this, where they were having to miss portions of or days of practice leading into games to get themselves ready so they could play. Georgia wasn't. I mean, that was a headache for Georgia all season.
How often did we hear Kirby say, we have to literally restrain Ladd McConkey because he would play with one leg?
Every week.
Let him.
Yeah, and he's just out there. He's out there going at it. And Georgia really wants to bring in a couple of guys that are ready to play right now, that can kind of give them a boost and deepen that receiving core. And you just you haven't really had that consistency on the outside. One of my initial thoughts is, and listen, I haven't heard any insight on this, but I think that if Georgia could get a Ra Thomas and a Dante Cephas or a Tez Walker, or even a Grant Dubose or a Dominic Lovett, that they would feel a lot more comfortable working Ladd McConkey back inside at the slot receiver position. And, kind of it makes them a little more fluid in terms of position swapping, mixing, matching personnel to get, some of their most dangerous packages on the field. And I think that's a huge part of it as well.
One point that I'd be remiss to skip out on before we move on to our dog stocks and wrap this thing up. Todd Monken got a lot of airtime, a lot of publicity during his own awards season run for the Broyles. Didn't win it, but we got to hear from that guy, and he's one of a kind, man. And what he's doing with Georgia's offense is generationally special as well. And you bring in some transfer portal dudes, and he's still around, then you're looking at, again, an evolution to this Georgia offense that is pretty scary. Now, that's the caveat, though. Do y'all anticipate a big push for Monken as a head coach this offseason, regardless of what happens with the Dogs?
I mean, I think some teams are going to be interested, but if you're Todd Monken, he walked away from Southern Miss for a reason. And I'm not saying that he wouldn't want a head job, or if he got the right NFL OC job, he's gone. He's gone. All right. I think if Jim Harbaugh would have got the Vikings
that feels
job
like the
last
threat.
year,
yeah.
I think if Jim Harbaugh would have gotten the Vikings job last year, that you might have seen Todd Monken go as OC.
Jake, let me ask this, because this is always something that I've thought about that situation. Is an NFL is the instability of an NFL OC job and just working in the league in general, is that more desirable to somebody who is 56 than the stability that we know he's got at Georgia? I mean, they're paying him as the highest paid assistant in the country. Gave him a contract extension. They want him here. There's no doubt about that. I think
what's the book on him, though, is that he doesn't stay places too long. And I'm not saying that he just has this bug and wants to leave, but that's part of his resume.
I guess
a lot of coaches are like that.
I guess what I'm just saying is, to me, the stability that you have at Georgia, you're not getting fired anytime soon, assuming you handle your business, properly.
Getting fired doesn't scare these guys, man. Most of them, anyway, and it definitely shouldn't. Getting fired is not. The guy's the highest paid assistant coach in college football right now. If he goes to the NFL, getting fired from the NFL is not going to worry him, because A, he's loaded. All right, he's got enough money to to burn a wet mule as it is, and two, he's going to get hired by somebody. I mean, he'll get hired by somebody just to be an analyst. And if he just wants to twiddle, I mean, he gets to figure out how much he wants to get back in the game if he hits the. But again, I mean, I don't know how he feels about Athens. Todd Monken's been a tough egg to crack. You get to know some of these coaches, pretty well through people that know them, and they'll tell you, well, oh yeah, he does this, or I talked to him about this or that. You don't hear a whole lot from Todd Monken, man.
There's nothing that's like personal, that comes out about that guy. He has a very colorful vocabulary, and he's very particular about what he does.
Going into last season, I think it was, or during spring practice or something, he ripped his Achilles. I do know that. And then he got COVID like 7 times. Like he had COVID like at every turn there, like for a calendar year. It seemed like I was like, man, Monken's got COVID again. You're hearing all this stuff behind the scenes, and there are some people out there in the sports world, maybe on this beat, maybe not going to talk about it, that love reporting stuff like that because they love being inside baseball. I'm trying not to sit out there and tell everybody, hey, man, the guy's just had surgery on his Achilles tendon, the old rascal.
Yeah.
He's too old to walk downstairs. I was too old to walk downstairs at 28.
One thing I will add to that in the reason I think part of the
Todd
reason
Monken drives a hover round. Breaking news.
Part of the reason that I think that we haven't gotten to know Monken as well is because of, like you said, COVID, not him having COVID, but the restrictions that we didn't talk to coordinators in person have we ever this
we got Todd.
This fall was the first time that we talked to Todd
Todd. We got him this summer. Yeah.
Yeah. That was I was trying to think if we had talked to him in person at all. That was the first time because we got him on Zoom ahead of the 2020 season, on Zoom ahead of the 2020 Peach Bowl.
Zoom.
So
yep, Zoom. Speaking of Todd Monken, though, there's something I got to bring up.
Does it pertain to Buster Faulkner?
No, it does not.
Because that's my dog stock.
Okay. Here we go here. Todd Monken.
Turf.
And I'm going to go ahead and jump into dog stocks too. I'm going stock down on you people who made my job hard when I was somewhere else last year during the college football playoff. Because Todd Monken, the sweet man that he is, the soft-spoken, kind Christian man that he is, but he's what a good man. He goes up there and he protects Stetson Bennett and he says, hey, I know we can win a national title with Stetson Bennett. Mm-hmm. And man, you would have thought
called a shot.
You would have thought that he engineered like Brexit and the FTX crash and all of those things at once. Because I'm talking about when people found out, when he said it emphatically and he crushed dreams because there were people that were like, Kirby's doing this. And one day Kirby's going to give way to Monken and everything's going to be better. But then Monken was like, Stetson's my guy. There's no doubt we can win a championship with him.
Yeah.
Everybody thought that, oh, man.
JT Daniels is definitely going to start against Michigan.
Yeah, JT Daniels is Monken's guy. That's who Monken's guy is. No, man. Stetson was Monken's guy. Stetson and Monken told you what Stetson could do. Stetson's done it once. Stetson's got Georgia in position to do it twice. Stock down on you people. You caused me a lot of headaches last offseason.
What do you mean, you people? Palmer.
You silver britches people.
Let's keep it offensive. Palmer.
So I'm going stock up on Buster Faulkner. All this conversation about Todd,
great grandson of William Faulkner.
All this conversation about Todd, the guy that the unsung hero of this offensive staff is Buster Faulkner. We heard Stetson talk about him at his Burlsworth acceptance speech, which was.
You've been looking at my Facebook headlines.
I haven't. Did you write unsung?
No,
hero?
you wrote a story. You put a story up, and I put it up on Facebook, and I changed the regular headline to an unsung hero headline because it was about Buster Faulkner.
Jake, one thing, stock up on Jake's ability to write headlines. That's he told me early in our time together. said, "Hey, I don't know if I'm good in this business at all, but one thing I know I am good at is writing a headline." So
I try.
But Buster Faulkner, the unsung hero, as Jake called him, in his smart SEO friendly headline. Huge praise for him from Stetson Bennett, both at the Burlsworth Awards ceremony and this past weekend in New York. Talked about how he's the level-headed one on the sideline. That
they're attached at the hip on the sidelines. If you know what you're looking for down there.
Yeah, and he's kind of explained why that is. He doesn't talk to Todd Monken during the game, which was very interesting to me because you think about coordinator up in the box, quarterback down on the field. Hey, end of the drive, get him on the phone, put him on the headset, whatever. Talk. Stetson said that they don't do that, and that they don't need to do that because Stetson doesn't want Monken hearing everything that he has to say during the heat of the moment, and Monken doesn't want Stetson hearing everything he has to say in the heat of the moment. There's those are two very, very passionate guys. And so Buster Faulkner, his ability to, Stetson's called it a filter effect. His ability to filter what needs to be heard on both sides. It's really impressive. He said he's the one that puts them through drills. We've seen that a little bit when we've gotten to see some practice. Todd Monken is the head coach of the offense. He's overseeing everything. Buster Faulkner is working directly with the quarterbacks, even if Monken has that quarterback coach title. If Todd Monken were to leave, I think Buster Faulkner is the immediate promotion. I don't know how much they would want to look around because they've kind of found what has worked the last 3 years. They don't want to go back to a Jim Chaney, James Coley type offense. They want to stay in this new era that Todd Monken has brought them into the last 3 years, and Buster Faulkner would create some continuity there. So stock up on Buster Faulkner. Have heard some buzz that he is a high choice for Georgia Tech in their open offensive coordinator position.
Well, surely he will not go to Georgia Tech. That just isn't allowed.
But stock up on Buster and his offensive coaching ability and his mediation ability too.
Well, Buster Faulkner is like the deep cut that the real Georgia football fans, the real addicts, they know Buster Faulkner's waiting in the wings to just guide this offense if and when it's necessary. I'm going to say stock up on this guy right here, Palmer Toms, bringing it home. Got that Heisman Trophy framed up behind him, and he was an honorary member of the Heisman House, the only DawgsHQ staffer that has visiting rights to the Heisman House. It's Palmer Toms. Great work. I know New York is a magical place this time of year, and the Heisman is pretty special. As I said, though, I just have a feeling it's going to get a lot less special because I'm sure Georgia is going to start to have guys up there every couple of years now. Maybe Brock Bowers next season. Maybe it's one of these transfer portal guys that we talked about. We saw Caleb Williams do that. And that was the interesting thing to me about this whole Heisman deal. Out of the guys that were there, it's kind of a little microcosm of the game. You got the guy that transferred, followed his coach, picks up the individual award, but then you got the guy Stetson, doesn't get nearly as many votes as Caleb did. Caleb crushed it, by the way. Everyone knew he was the Heisman Trophy winner. Wasn't even close. Stetson, the loyal dog, comes back, doesn't pick up all the individual votes that Caleb Williams did, but he still has a lot of goals to accomplish from the team perspective. And it seems like these Dogs feel pretty confident with the system they have, what they've done to this point in the year, and their coaches have them believing. So
one thing I'll add there, Wes, you said that Stetson still has didn't get the individual award, but still has that team award ahead of him. I thought the interaction and his reaction to Caleb during Caleb's acceptance speech, Caleb was up on the stage with the trophy. You had Stetson and Duggan and Stroud all sitting down in the crowd. And he, you could tell Caleb was, excited to win the individual award, but, like he said, hey, I get this one. You three guys get to go play for a college football playoff. I think that's probably if USC,
I wonder if he'd trade it.
If USC makes it to the playoff next year, which they had a strong chance to do it this year, probably will have another strong chance to do it next year. And Caleb Williams might have a strong chance to go back to back, although we would have said that about Bryce Young. Anyway, if USC makes it there, I think you're going to hear him talk about that weekend, this past weekend in New York, being around those three guys that were playing for a bigger goal. I think you're going to hear him talk about how much he envied that. Even if he was the one that won the individual award, I think the team reference, the team award is something that he really covets.
He also had his own name for Stet, which was Stets. Stets. Not Stetson, Stets.
Let's talk about Stets. His host when he visited Georgia. It's pretty cool.
Couple of unofficial visits there. Georgia was in good shape to get him. They were in really good shape to get him. And, the whole, got to take the good with the bad. And the bad was you lost Caleb Williams. The good was you had to get rid of James Coley to get Todd Monken.
And they got Brock Vandegrift, who was at the time committed to where Caleb ended up committing.
Yeah, no doubt, for sure. So that was big. I believe he had decommitted already before Monken. Yeah, he decommitted right around the time that the playoff was going on. I think right around the time Georgia was playing in the Sugar Bowl. And, it's somewhere, maybe New Year's Day or something like that. And then, Todd Monken comes on a few weeks later. He commits. Hadn't panned out for him yet, but we'll see how that works out in the spring. Also want to point out some big-time Palmer homerism going on in the comments over here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Who's that?
Hi, Mom.
Special lady.
Nah, you're
Palmer's life.
Palmer's adopted. That's an inside on the road joke. I'm always messing with Palmer. So
don't get mama on you, Jake. Appreciate y'all tuning in. No, it's not a game week. National Signing Day coming up though, and transfer portal news always hopping. You just never know. You don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. We had an idea about Norton going, and that took like 2 or 3 days longer than we thought it was going to take.
Yeah, so, held us hostage.
He did, man. He did. I was ready to make that video and just like waiting, didn't sleep. It was me and Bill Norton.
Bill Norton.
The old transfer portal tango. But stay tuned to DawgsHQ for that. $10 still for a premium membership. Fun weeks ahead. They can't always be Heisman Trophy weeks, but National Signing Day is pretty special. Transfer portal is pretty special. And I know some bonehead on National Talk Sports Hot Take TV will say something about Stetson Bennett or Kirby Smart that we'll get to write about in the next couple weeks too. It's inevitable. It's what college football playoff time is all about. And we got bowl season. I mean, there's stuff. There's always stuff. Always time to talk about the Dogs. And I also want to say sorry to the GHSA victims at Georgia State, top to bottom. I mean, I don't.
And I do want to. I mean, I know we've already mentioned it, but again, thoughts and prayers out to the Pirate. Fight hard, dude. World's a better place with you in it. We in the media do love our Mike Leach, and even if some of his players get a little frustrated with him from time to time, we do love him. And we need a man that looks like an old Vince Gill walking around, and he's the best candidate.
We're big fans of that guy. Pulling for him for sure. Thank y'all for joining us tonight. We will catch you the next time that we catch you. Peace.